The night sky went from black to fiery red in an instant. The villagers ran and hid. They locked their windows and doors, and lights began to go out in the houses like disappearing fireflies. And then there was the smell of sulfur in the air. The village of Tristeza became a dark, silent void against an infernal sky. But the silence didn't last long. Soon, familiar screams began to travel through the night air like fireworks on the 4th of July. The screams didn't last long, maybe a few seconds. But then the lights began to come back on as the village came back to life. Soon, the villagers gathered in the village square with sad looks on their faces, and they stood around quietly. No one uttered a word until a gray-haired elder named Alba spoke in a quivering voice. Does anybody know who it was this time? She got no response. But then a wailing sound was heard from a distant house, and people followed the elder as she walked in that direction. And in front of a small dwelling, they found a woman weeping and wailing. And she spoke through her tears, and she said, "This time, it was my daughter, Suspiro. This is all that remains." And she held up a charred dress that was probably once blue. Well, everyone there wept with her, and they shook their fists at that dark sulfur sky. Alba embraced the heartbroken woman, and then she addressed the crowd. She said, "Tomorrow, the council will convene, and we will try. We will try to find a solution to this problem that has plagued our people for generations." Well, the next day, the council lodge was filled to capacity. Everyone stood around, but their faces were masked of fear and disappointment. Alba was the last to arrive. She was a frail, thin woman with wispy gray hair, but she walked with confidence and grace, and everyone stood reverently as she walked to the front. And she found her chair in the center of a small stage, and she gestured for the villagers to sit. And then she spoke, and everyone listened intently as the wisest and the oldest of the elders spoke in a calm and soothing voice. "Our people live in fear of Fogon the dragon. Every month he flies in from the south, breathing fire and looking for a young maiden to devour, to satiate his hunger for human flesh. I know you're all afraid, especially those with young daughters. There have been times that his hunger is such that he will devour more than one girl. Even mothers and grandmothers have not been spared. But today has been good news. My brother, who rules a village beyond the North Woods, he's sending us a warrior he met at the Battle of Sin Suerte. Yes, he witnessed this warrior conquer armies and defeat dragons single-handedly. The warrior will arrive at the end of the month and prepare to battle Fogon the dragon." The people applauded and they hugged each other and they walked out feeling hopeful. The end of the month came quicker than anyone really wanted. It was the 3rd Sunday of the month when the warrior rode into town in a gray and black spotted mare. It was a young woman of average height, slender, with an oval-shaped face that was decorated with freckles. Her red curly hair cascaded down to her shoulders, and it contrasted starkly with those bright green eyes that she had. You could see a dark purple blouse behind a gold breastplate. She had black leather pants and boots to match. and across her back was strapped a silver sword with an ebony handle that was decorated with mother of pearl. Everyone marveled at the appearance of this warrior, and they followed from afar as she walked in the direction of Alba's house. And there they waited, just to see what the warrior would say, what she would do. She walked into the elder's house, and it was an hour before the gray-haired woman appeared. "The warrior's name is Luz," she said. "She's going to stay in my house and rest while she prepares to battle for Gon at the end of the month. Now, she has told me that in her travels, she has found that there is a simple way to conquer a dragon. Dragons respond to music, so she will use her singing, not her sword, to bring down Gon the dragon." Everyone looked at each other confused. I mean, they mumbled and they didn't know what to think. They could not understand this kind of logic. So the elder spoke one last time before she retreated to her home. "This warrior is confident. We need to trust her strategy." And with that, she was gone. Well, a few days later, in the late evening, the young woman was seen walking from Alba's house to the village square. But to everyone's surprise, she didn't look like a warrior at all. Her curly red hair was brushed back, and it was pinned with diamond-studded clips. And she wore a long lavender gown that flowed in the evening breeze as she walked gracefully down the street. And when she got to the square, she placed a mat on the ground, and she sat as one who meditates. And there she stayed like a statue, without moving. Well, darkness fell, and some people that were watching went home, but others, they hid behind trees and houses just to see what would happen next. It wasn't long until the dark sky began to glow like the embers of a fireplace, and then that sickening smell of sulfur filled the air. And the people that were hiding shook with fear, but they didn't dare move from their hiding places. Then the leaves and the branches of the trees began to shake violently as the wings of the creature created turbulence. The dragon landed a few feet from the young woman. He had scaly skin that glistened in the light of the street lamps. Bat-like wings draped his shoulders, and his eyes and that reptilian face were like torchlights. They glowed in the dark, and when he opened his mouth, flames would shoot out. And he looked at the young woman with curiosity and desire, and then began to walk toward her slowly, until he was halted in his tracks by a haunting song. The young woman, with her eyes closed, began to sing a song so beautiful that many of the villagers who were hiding began to weep. Her voice traveled in the night like a gentle breeze that carried the fragrance of orange blossoms and jasmine. It was in a language that they couldn't understand, but somehow their hearts understood every word. The dragon began to tremble, and then tears rolled from those large, glowing eyes. The warrior stood up, and she walked towards the dragon, and she knelt before him, and still singing, in a beautiful song, still as powerful as before, she knelt by the dragon, who was now lying in a fetal position, weeping, and began to stroke his face, still singing. The dragon seemed to fall asleep, and she bent down and she kissed his brow, and then, to everyone's surprise, she reached under her purple gown and took out her silver sword with the ebony handle, and she plunged it deep into the heart of that dragon. And he let out a mournful scream that sounded like bagpipes, sending a departed soul to another world. And when she pulled it out, flames shot out from the wound. And then flames from everywhere, every orifice of the dragon. Flames came out, and soon he was engulfed in flames. It looked as though a bonfire was burning in the middle of the village square. People began to come from their hiding places. Some came from their homes to see the once ferocious creature reduced to lumps of burning flesh. The young woman stood there holding that silver sword that was now tarnished from the flames. not showing any emotion, but you could see one single tear rolling down her freckled face. And then a solitary figure was seen walking in the direction of the crowd. It was Alba, the elder. She was holding the reins of the spotted mare, and she gazed at that young woman and stared into her eyes, and they both looked at each other without saying a word. Then the old woman handed the reins of the horse to the warrior. She mounted the mare and rode away without looking back. The villagers looked at the dragon, who was now reduced to a smoldering pile of ashes. Then when they looked at the departing warrior, they saw the sun begin to rise in front of a silhouette on horseback. The warrior.